So I'm going to talk about open data, and as you hear, my voice is not on opera level at the moment. So to keep my voice, I have had no coffee and only warm water with honey all day. So I'm on a caffeine abstinence and sugar high. So you know what to prepare for. So I want to talk about open data. We haven't talked about open data very much here, and it relates very much to the API field, and we have a lot to learn when we work with APIs from what open data people do, and they definitely have a lot to learn if they would be here and listening to all you guys. So who in here actually works with open data? Anybody? One guy, two guys. Fantastic, and I worked with 50% of you, so that's good. So open data. So open data. No, never mind. Let's try this again. Okay, I guess I stand over here. No, I guess I don't do that either. Sorry about this. Fantastic. Open data. Since 98% of you don't work with it daily, let me define it for you. It's data that's without license limitations, without price. You can do whatever you want with it. If there's any kind of limitation on what you can do with it, except refer back to where you got it, it's not open data. That means that however open Facebook calls its API, it's not open data, because they have quite strict limitations on what you can do with it. Most commonly, this is from the public sector, so from government, cities, and so forth. And you probably used a lot of it. If you check the weather, you used open data, because most weather data is open data. If you planned your trip here on the subway, you've used open data, because that's also open data. There's a lot of open data out there. In the UK, that's absolutely leading on this. I think there's 18,500 open data sets available. US has a lot of open data. Sweden is claiming to have a lot of data, and soon we will. We're working on it. So what does this have to do with APIs? This is an API conference. This is not an open data conference. Open data can be distributed via an API. It doesn't have to be distributed via, as it often is, Excel files or just text files. That's also open data. That's also valuable. But it can and are in many cases distributed via API. But that's not the main reason I'm here talking about open data. It's because I think there's a lot to learn between those different communities. I'm in the open data bubble, or the open data community, and I'm in the API community. And both are about openness and let's integrate, but the overlap is very, very small. Otherwise, there would be more than 2 people in here working with open data. And how many of you have been on an open data conference of any sort? I guess not that many either. And that's a shame, because we have a lot to learn from each other. So, talking platforms all day long, and yesterday as well. Open data platforms has a lot in common with API platforms. You basically automate relationships. That's what you do with an open API. You want somebody to sign up, get API key or credentials, and start using your API. And they click, yes, I agree to your licensing term, whatever they are, I don't care. And they start using it. You don't need to have a face-to-face interaction. You don't need to sign a paper before you start using it. It's the same with open data. You automate relationships. You use it as a hub for innovation. That's the dream of most government authorities and cities and organizations that publish open data, that developers is going to come running and just innovate the heck out of it. And as we've heard the last 2 days, build it and they will come is a perfect tactic. It works perfectly, just as perfect here as with any API. For open data, there's even bigger problems, and I will come to that soon. And also, you publish things. You try to be a platform because you want to fulfill your goals. If you're a company, your goals by law is to make as much money as you can get your hands on. If you're government authority dealing with the weather, it's probably to get weather information out there to other government authorities or to Swedish Navy hunting stuff in the archipelago or to the citizens of the country. So you use open data to fulfill your goals. And I should actually have added one more here, is that you don't have a choice. The European Union, the Swedish government, the US government, President Obama, many others have said that you will publish your data openly, period. It's not a choice. So by law, Swedish authorities don't have to yet, but I hope that will come soon. But there's very strong pressure anyway from even European Union to publish a lot. So it's not really a choice. So I worked with open data, but my first impression of open data was not the most positive ever. I felt it. I worked with APIs. I worked with Facebook's API and Twitter's API. I built my own APIs, built APIs for customers. And then you come to open data and it's kind of just go back into time. API? No, but look here, we have an Excel file. Okay, that's sexy. Look here, we have documentation. No, you don't. You have an FTP directory with an Excel file in it. That's not the same thing, sorry. Look here, we're marketing to developers. Not unless you give them your FTP credentials, you're not. It was really going back into time. And that's on many, many levels. It's technical, but it's also with the people that deals with open data, because those have a very different background from me. I'm not saying they do the wrong thing, but they do a different thing from me, and that's hard to realize unless you work with them for a while. They have been working in a bureaucratic organization, big organization, slow-moving organization for a long time. And that impacts the way they think and impacts the way they work. And it impacts how data is presented as well. So my first impression was that this is the worst of academia combined with the worst of bureaucracy. I don't want to do this at all. So what I did then was actually work with open data. It kind of just became a very big part of my day job because there were so many cool new projects that wasn't labeled open data, but it was more labeled, let's get the data out there. We can do it via API and develop a community and so forth. And it took me a while to realize that these projects were actually open data. It's the same thing. It doesn't have to be back into time. It can be modern. It can be useful. So I've been working with a lot with traffic data, together a bit with Daniel Rudmark, that I hope you heard speak yesterday about his tests why developers use APIs. If you haven't, check out the video. And I worked, right now, I work with the city of Helsingborg in southern Sweden with their open data initiative. And I worked with a lot of other data projects as well, small roles and big roles during the last 3 years. So I've changed. I like open data. I see the potential, but it's really an undervalued asset for society and for every single one in here, because I bet it that your business can take advantage of open data in your day-to-day business. Or if your business can't, you can. So there's a lot of value here that's not being extracted, and that's just sad. So about a year ago, I wrote a blog post about the theory of the perfect open data project, and I tried to find a metaphor. I found one that didn't really fit. That was a marathon, that you start warming up, you publish something to get the conversation going, then you publish more and more and more, and you never stop running, and the marathon ends sometimes. So the metaphor wasn't perfect. But then, there's been a year since then, and I worked with much more open data, met much more people in the open data community, and much more people in the development community that don't care about open data at all. So I come to the conclusion that nobody cares. Nobody cares about open data except the small open data bubble. And there's a really good Facebook group in Sweden, OpenGov, that talks about open data. We share links, share tips. And there's 1,500 people in there, and I think that's basically the bubble in Sweden. And that's sad, because it has such a big potential. And nobody cares for a reason. It's not that it's bad data and it's not valuable. It's really valuable. I mean, there's been calculations on how much weather data is worth, only weather data. And it's huge. It's millions of dollars, or if not billions. And they've done the calculations of how many companies in the US live off open weather data compared to Europe, where it is just now starting to be opened. In the US, it's been opened for years and years. And it's like night and day. There's a whole ecosystem of companies in the US, all paying taxes, so the government's happy. And here, there's a few, because it's just now starting to be opened. So nobody cares, and that's not their fault. It's actually the fault of the people publishing it. And I'm trying to change that, because I think this is just wasted resource for us, for society in general. So how do we change it? I want to talk about 3 steps, the same 3 steps that I think are important in any API project. First one being the technology. We have to have it. This is the really, really cool part, at least if you're a programmer, this is what you want to work with, right? Unfortunately, this is where any open data project, or not any, almost any open data project starts. Starts with the technology. It starts with what technical platform should we use, not what data should we release and publish, and why should we do it, and who should use it, and why should I use it, and why is that good? No, never mind that. What platform should we use? That's like saying that we need a website, should we use Drupal or WordPress? Like, well, who's going to use it? Is the people that use the Drupal or WordPress or Episerver, or like, what are you trying to do? Never mind, you want a website. Don't start with the technical part. Just, you need to define what you want. And then you use the technology to solve that. Technology is a tool and not the end solution. That's not the way, that's not me, I hope, no. That's not the way it is in the open data world most commonly. We need CCAN, that's the favorite platform. Okay, why do you need that? Because we're going to do open data. Okay, and why do you need CCAN? Can't you just have an FTP directory? That's a classical approach. No, we need CCAN. And then you lose the reason why you need it. And you need to think about that as well when you think, what API management solutions do we need? Or what platform, what framework, what do we need technically? First decide why you need it and what you need it for before you decide what technology to use. Which is hard, because when you're at a conference like this, you see all this new sexy tech, and I want to use that, I don't care for what, because I want to use that. And I understand that urge. I'm the same way myself. I spend way too many hours weighing different technical options against each other instead of actually writing code and going somewhere. That's a danger of the profession, I guess. Talking about API management, if you publish an open data API, you have exactly the same challenges as if you publish any API. So you need to solve the same problems. And those problems are usually incorporated in what's called API management. You need to have good documentation. You need to have traffic management, rate limiting, and so forth. What you might not need if you have data without any license where anybody can do anything is limitations on who can do stuff. So you should just probably not use API keys or OAuth or anything, just let people use it. But a lot of the same problems as you saw with API management, you need to solve when you do open data APIs as well. That said, you don't need to have an API if you do open data. You can do it much simpler than that. And that all depends on what data you release and who's the target audience. And the target audience is not always somebody that can use an API. A very good example is the general election we had a few months ago here in Sweden. And the Swedish election authority released a lot of open data very quickly with the election result down to very, very small geographic area in Sweden. So suddenly you can find, based on your city or what part of the city you live in any newspaper, on lots of websites, any newspaper's website, on national TV and so forth. You can get all this data. There was graphs, there was maps, there was just visualization heaven. It was everywhere. That's not the way it's been before. And a lot is thanks to the election authority that release all this data very timely in a format that the target audience, journalists, are used to using. What technical formats are journalists used to using? Excel, if you're lucky. They released Excel files, and it worked perfectly. They don't need API management. They don't need any rate limiting. They don't need any tokens and SAML. They have a page that lists some Excel files. You can download them, and then you can input them into whatever mapping solution you have or so forth. That worked perfectly. That's all they needed. And the Swedish parliament is working very, very well with open data. They're one of the leaders here. They are actually moving away from doing API for developers and doing RSS, doing comma-separated files that you can import into Excel, because their target audience is mainly journalists. Those are the main users. And think about that in your API projects. Do you actually need just JSON? Or do you need XML? If you have .NET programmers, they probably prefer XML. Or do you need comma-separated files? I don't know. At least ask the question and don't just assume JSON is the answer. The next part you need, beyond technology, is organization. You need support from your organization to do this. Somebody needs to write a check. Somebody hopefully have to help you get access to this data so you can publish it. And there are some common arguments in why should an organization release open data. And I've removed the argument you have to because the government tells you so, because it still takes quite a while for authorities to do it, even if the government says so, and if the European Union says so. The common arguments are that it's good for transparency. People can see what we work on. And that's very true when it comes to information like economic transactions. For a city, for example, can I see if the politician's cousin owned that company that gets all the contracts? That's not good. I don't like that. So transparency can be good, and that increases people's belief in the system. Democracy, very, very closely related to transparency, that people get more involved in society, more involved in what's happening. And increased innovation is usually on the top of the list, because that magically then increases tax revenue, and everything is hunky-dory, everybody's happy. But that's, the basis there is that people actually use the data. Otherwise, this is completely pointless. If nobody uses your API, or if nobody uses open data to build something, and then somebody uses what you've built, it's pointless. If I build an API, an app on your API and nobody uses my app, your API, by extension, is pointless. You wasted your money. Same thing with open data. And there's a lot of wasted money in that field right now. So let's talk about real arguments that actually work. Because the ones before are very high-flying and theoretical. They sound good. But if you talk to a politician that have to decide to go for this project or not, improved democracy compared to we need to finance this school, well, we probably should finance the school because otherwise I won't get re-elected. So those arguments don't actually lead to that many open data projects beyond the ones that really are interested in this area, really burning for this area. So I think internal projects, enabling new projects in that organization is a really good argument to get money to do this. You can do something that you could not do before. In the city of Helsingborg, we have a project now to release statistics data. And the motivation to do so is that the city needs to produce visualization for different reasons of this data to make it easily accessible for non-statisticians. Bad word to say when you have a sore throat. They need to do that. Okay, how do we actually do these visualizations? We need to make the data available to all the different cool tools we want to use. How do we do that? Oh, we do an API. Oh, we have an API? Well, why not release it? So that's very closely related with the second one, which is savings. If you can save money on an internal project and then release it openly as a side effect, anything extra is just bonus. You don't have to care about increased innovation and democracy. You already saved your money, you already made your money. Everything else is just bonus. Which leads us to a very important one. PR. You look good doing this. And that's a big driver, very big driver right now when not everybody's doing this. Then marketing. We have technology, organization, and you need market to get other people to use it. That's where people get stuck, in the open data bubble. You market to those 1,500 people that are working with open data. They don't use open data, they publish open data. Same thing here, we market to developers that are using APIs already. Maybe we should expand a bit. You need to go outside your bubble to reach a new audience. That's especially true for open data. And you need to remember the basics. We've heard it over and over. You need to have documentation. You need to have code examples. You need to be where the users or potential users of the data is. We've heard it over and over, and it's really, really true. It should not be forgotten. Don't hire an API evangelist or open data evangelist until you have your documentation done. The code is not the documentation, and the Excel file is definitely not the documentation either. I want to mention as a good example what they do in the UK. I already mentioned they have a lot of data sets. They also have a lot of help for startups working with open data to extract the value out of it. There's startups working with government spending. Like, what is the government spending money on and why? From open data. There's a company working with healthcare. Based on open data in healthcare, they can help make healthcare more efficient. And I hope we can get support like that for companies in other countries in Europe as well. So in summary, very quickly, because I'm running out of time, is this much more than technology. Same thing for your daily life, your daily API project. It's much more than technology. Selfish motivations work. That is good for democracy and generally good for the business is good, but if you can make savings right now, you can motivate it. And then everything else is just bonus. And go outside your bubble when you want to market open data, when you want to market your API, whatever it is. You need to look further. Not just come to API conferences, I'm guilty. You need to go to other conferences as well. And a last little bit of a plug, I'm actually trying to, together with some other people, to attack these problems in Ordino, a new company that's hopefully incorporated today, we'll see. You'll hear more from us soon, I hope. At least the two of you working with open data should remember this. And that's all I had, and my voice actually worked somewhat. So thank you very much.